Thank you. When we think about the Salvation Army, a lot of times we think of the most visible parts. The thrift store, which is incredible and open, you should go shop there today, and bell ringing. I know so many Rotarians are bell ringers. Bell ringers are my favorite people. Thank you so much for standing in the cold to help people that are in need. Today, I'll tell you a couple of those things that bell ringing and the store support. I'll talk about that on a broader scale, about what that looks like nationally, and then I'll zoom in locally and end with what you guys can do personally to continue to make sure that people that are in need are served. Okay, so first of all, nationally, we are one of the oldest and largest providers of social services in the country and the world. In fact, there's about 30 million people that the Salvation Army serves every year. There's about 30 million seconds in a year. So that's like serving a new person, unduplicated, every single second, every day for an entire year, every year. We're active in every zip code in the United States. We've been in Winchester for 101 years, internationally 135 years, started in London, and the Salvation Army is in 130 countries. We are a faith-based organization. The mission of the Salvation Army is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and meet human needs in his name without discrimination. And so because of that, I'm an ordained minister of the gospel. The Salvation Army has a church here in Winchester. It's a bilingual church, so there's English speakers, Spanish speakers, and homeless that are part of the church that my wife and I are able to pastor. And because our entire mission is based on the love of Christ, we see that Jesus loved everybody and served everybody, and so that's what we do. And we determine never to discriminate based on any matter for either hiring or service. We are one of the most effective organizations in the world. In fact, when you give to the Salvation Army, 82 cents of every dollar goes directly to that life-saving mission. And a lot of other agencies, you see that number flipped. But you know that when you're giving to the Salvation Army, when you're raising money for the Salvation Army, the money really is going to help the people that you have in mind. That's why Peter Drucker said that the Salvation Army is the most effective organization in America. So let's look at what this is like locally. Whenever there is a need, the Salvation Army is flexible enough that we're able to fill that to the best of our ability. And so that means we have a very broad range of services that we offer. It's almost like you have 10 different charities, all with the same staff and in the same building, because there's so many different things that we do. So I already told you some about the church. Another thing that we do is emergency disaster services. So it's a canteen. It's like a food truck, and it's stationed right here in Winchester so that we can immediately serve whenever there's a disaster. I was in a coordination meeting yesterday with the emergency managers for our area so that if there's ever a disaster locally, the Salvation Army is charged with doing most of the feeding in that local disaster. The food truck is able to serve up to 1,000 meals per meal every day. We're able to deploy that whenever there's a regional disaster. It's been to the Gulf and to the Atlantic for hurricanes over and over. But the most real disaster that a lot of us have seen, of course, is COVID. When COVID first hit and the grocery stores were running shy and people were losing their work and hadn't been able to have that shored up by the government yet, the Salvation Army was very fast in responding. We never closed the pantry. We never closed our homeless shelter. And we took that mobile kitchen and we started feeding meals immediately. So just in the period from March until the middle of June, from that truck we served 16,804 meals. To put that in perspective, Winchester proper has a population of about 28,000. So serving over 16,000 meals is like serving more than half of the entire population of Winchester a single meal. And we did that in just a couple months. Another thing that we do is our homeless shelter. I'm very proud of our homeless shelter because we're the only shelter in the area that is designed and set up to be able to serve families. So we're able to help single males, single women, and families with children. Only shelter that's set up to be able to do that. It's a 40-bed shelter. Last night, there were 31 people who slept there. And of that 31, 10 of them were children. Because we serve so many kids, we have a playground that's in the back so that kids can play on that playground right on the property. And we've also installed a new learning center so that the kids that are in school are able to do their online learning on the days that they're at the shelter, and they have everything that they need. They have an internet, they have a secluded space where they're able to focus with kid art and kid-sized tables and chairs where they're able to still continue with their education. Our philosophy is to determine what the success is for a resident as being self-sufficient. And so from the moment that a resident comes in, we help them identify the goals that they would like so that they can become self-sufficient as quickly as possible. Generally, we're able to achieve that in 3 to 4 months. So although you'd have 40 beds, it's not the same person in that bed every day of the year. It's a new person because one person becomes self-sufficient, is able to move out, has a job, has their own place, and becomes a productive member of society and living in the fullness that God has for them, so that we're able to serve a large number of people throughout the year. We can calculate the value that the shelter has and also the cost. When we look at everything that the soup kitchen does and everything that the homeless shelter does and combine it all with everything, including payroll and insurance and property and all the possible costs you could possibly think of, a single night at the shelter is cost $45.89. So we're able to serve everybody, including everything that's happening at the soup kitchen, for under $50 a night. The soup kitchen is also able to serve an enormous number of people. In September alone, so only last month, we served 1,282 meals to residents, but we also serve it to people that are outside. There's a lot of people that are living in, for instance, homeless camps that have decided not to live in a shelter for one reason or another. And so we take those meals, we put them in clamshells, and we're able to serve them out of the door. We served another 285 meals to the community. The soup kitchen is able to run almost entirely on in-kind donations. People donate an enormous amount of food to our soup kitchen. We average about and all that just turns into food that we're able to give away or to feed people directly. One picture of what that looks like, for instance, just before I came here, I got a call from a major chicken supplier, and they had a whole pallet of whole frozen chicken that they had to give away immediately. And so they called me, like, no problem. So we're able to receive that entire pallet of frozen chicken. They gave us a whole bunch of frozen chicken recently, so we've already filled our walk-in freezer. I'm just gonna go on the internet, and I'm gonna be able to connect with that, and we're gonna be able to give away all that chicken probably within an hour or so. The food pantry also does USDA food. We served 127 people from the food pantry in addition to the soup kitchen last month, and another 121 in a mass cleaning program similar to that frozen chicken thing that I told you about. We also do a lot to prevent homelessness. So not only do we solve homelessness, we also help people to not become homelessness. Generally, when somebody's homeless, it's because they stopped buying food and then they stopped paying their utilities, and then they stop paying their rent. That's why they're homeless. So what we do is we help people have free food, and we help people pay the utilities. We have a utility program. We're able to pay about $45,000 every year out in utilities assistance. Angel Tree. We help an enormous amount of people with Christmas assistance. These are children that we are careful, that they're all in need. We have a clearinghouse. None of these kids are doubling up. These are all real children. There's a flyer about that on most of those tables that I brought out about how you could actually adopt one of these real children with Angel Tree. This year we're serving about 600 kids. Usually we send a lot of kids to summer camp, and we have character building programs for children that meets every week. We're not doing that right now during COVID. We'll come back to it next year or so, as soon as we're able to. And the last thing that the Salvation Army does that's really remarkable is our addiction recovery program. The Salvation Army operates the nation's largest network of inpatient addiction recovery centers. And we do it entirely free to the beneficiaries. So somebody's able to have an in-person treatment program that lasts 6 months, includes all of their food, includes job training, all the counseling that they could need, and doesn't even require insurance. And all that is funded through the thrift stores that we have in major cities. We have 152 of those centers in America. The closest ones are in DC, Baltimore, Richmond, and Norfolk. So let me tell you about a couple of those people locally. One of them was a young homeless man, and he'd been on the streets for a while, really wanted a change in his life. He came in as a resident, got a job. He was on his way to becoming self-sufficient again when he relapsed. He relapsed hard. When we were able to connect with him again, what we did is we connected him with this ARC, this Adult Rehabilitation Center. We got him to the center, and that's where he is right now. So he's able to work on all of his substance use issues, and once he comes out of that in 6 months, he'll be able to be on his feet and stable once more. One of the families that we worked with recently had been chronically homeless, a single mother with 3 children. Because she's chronically homeless, they didn't have an address, and so the kids had not been in school for a very long time. But because we have an intensive casework program, we're able to work with that mom so that we're able to incentivize how she'd be able to get childcare when they're not in school, and to get the kids in school in the first place. We worked with the mom to sign the kids up for school. All 3 of them went back to school. In fact, the school bus comes to the shelter every single morning to pick up children and bring them to school. Just recently, that mom became self-sufficient again, and she and her 3 kids are on their own, happy and in their own home. There's another mom who has a single mom with a child who'd been struggling for a long time. Every morning she takes her child to family for childcare, and then she goes to her job. She often pulls double shifts so that she can save all the money that she can. She just gave us great news. It was just last week. She just signed the lease for her new apartment. It's well within her income. So she has a job that's steady, and she has a place that she's going to move into within the next couple weeks. And so all of this happens because of volunteers like you. I didn't do this personally. You are doing this. You are the volunteers of the Salvation Army. You are the donors of the Salvation Army. When you want to look at the Salvation Army, all you really have to do is look in a mirror, because it's you. There's lots of ways that you make this happen. I already gave you the information about Angel Tree. Another way that you can do this is through bell ringing, like you usually do. Bell ringing is going to be very safe this year. Bell ringing volunteers are going to be able to stay 6 feet away from the kettle so that you're never close to people. We even have disposable aprons this year, so nobody else has touched your apron. Comes with masks and gloves and sanitizer so that it'll be very safe. But for those of you who would like to be really safe, we even have online red kettles. Now, this is part of a campaign called Red Kettle Now. redkettlenow.com. You can go to this website, and it brings you right to an online kettle for Winchester. And you can have your own kettle for Rotary, so that it's like Rotary is volunteering to be bell ringers, and it's all entirely online. So everybody who's watching now, this is for you. Okay. So you can go in and set up your own kettle with your own challenge. You can decide whatever amount you want to do. Now, you're Rotary, so I expect that whatever challenge that Kiwanis chooses, is you're going to pick like twice, right? And that way you're able to raise money online as well as in person if you like. Now this is really important, this online cattle, because without it, we can't afford to do all the things that we're doing to help all the people that we have this year and next year. So I'm partnering with a friend. He has a business called Difference Makers. And what they do is they plan dramatic adventures, physical adventures to raise awareness for charity. And I'm gonna participate in this for a publicity campaign right after cattle starts. We're going to do a mountain marathon. We're gonna go down to the Blue Ridge right outside of Roanoke, and we're going to run and hike 24 miles on a mountain, because fundraising is an uphill battle this year. So whenever we get to the major vistas, I'll go on Facebook Live and people will be able to see how beautiful it is. I remember how important it is that we raise money so that we can make a difference in people's lives. What questions do you have today? Go ahead.
I had a couple questions. I think I had seen you guys have a food truck, maybe down at CCAP. Is that what you were talking about that was in the spring and summer months? Are you able to continue doing that throughout the year, or do people have to come out to Fort Collier to do the soup kitchen?
Yeah, we could run that whenever we want to. Right now, since people are able to go to the grocery store, there's less of a need for it. And so we're really careful about how we spend our time and money. But yeah, that was what we sent to CCAP. And if we had a few volunteers that wanted to run it and bring food, we'd be able to run it whenever we wanted to. But right now, people go to our location right up there on Fort Collier.
So the second question was somewhat similar, is, if there's, say, more folks, second question is if there's more folks maybe downtown that need your services and don't have transportation, how do they get out to your Fort Collier location?
Mm-hmm. The easiest way is taking a bus. I know a lot of people ride a bike or walk to get up there. There is a homeless camp a couple blocks away. I know a lot of people come from that area.
Okay.
And we're really glad to work with our partners. There's a lot of amazing agencies. And so Brandon is a really cool guy, and they do a lot of feeding right downtown too. And so, I mean, he's on it. So working together, I think that we're able to serve people really well between us and CCAP and the mission. Go ahead.
Do you live at the shelter? Because it seems like whenever there are new directors of the shelter, they come in as a couple. So how does that work? And then do you have, you're going to be here for 5 years, or how does your transition from, you were in Culpeper, now you're in Winchester? If you could explain that process.
Thanks. It only feels like I live at the shelter. No, we have a home. Yeah, we're in the county, actually close to here. I could drive home in 2 minutes when I leave. We just go to the shelter when we're there. We are appointed here. It's kind of like the military, where they just, my divisional commander knows where the needs are, and he tells people where you're most needed, and then we go. And we stay there as long as he tells us to stay. So average is about 4 years or so. That's about how long the Durants were here before us and their predecessors. So it's something like that, generally speaking. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me today.